We form a quorum. Members, information issues since the last meeting. I don't think there's anything to raise. As for the items for the next meeting, the government has proposed 2 items. The work progress of the Family Council, and also the provision of some daycare facilities for the elderly in the Anderson new development area. And we have got another one from Mr. Tan Kapil on the standard assessment mechanism for the provision of elderly service. Deputy Chairman, I thought the Hong Kong CSS had written to us, but I can raise it now. And there will be another 1,500 places for the elderly services. And at present, there are 5,000 places. All these will be put up for outsourcing. The service providers are not in favor of this, but the government insists that it will be outsourced. There will be an auction to invite a tendering exercise. Maybe the Secretariat can inform us when the letter comes in, or perhaps we can set aside a little bit of time for discussion. We have our last meeting for the term in July, and if we do not have a chance to discuss that, I believe after the summer break, when we come back in October, the tendering exercise will have completed, and the whole exercise will be completed in January or February next year. I think all the social work providers would suddenly have their employers change. It's just like having all security guards reassigned to new employers. So let's have a discussion in June or July. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to make it. So 2 items, and then we have another one from Mr. Tan Kapil, and then we expect Hong Kong CSS will propose 1 further item. As regards the 2 proposed items, I think the one on Anderson Road development may attract more comments. But for the others, I believe we don't need a lot of time. So if members do not object, can we have 4 items for the next meeting? If the Anderson Road development project is controversial and may need more time, I don't wonder if Mr. Tang's proposed item also requires more time for discussion. We need more time to talk about the tendering exercise. That would need a lot of time. So do we really want to put 4 items on the agenda? I would rather have 3 only. And can we defer the assessment mechanism the next time? Otherwise, it would be very superficial. We can only speak for 2 to 3 minutes. Mr. Tan Kapil, well, if we start a discussion on the assessment mechanism, yes, we may need more time. Yes, it's not as urgent as the other one. Oh, then thank you, Mr. Tan. We still have time. And I believe there's some people in the community would like to say something about the assessment mechanism for elderly services. We still have one or two meetings left. So if necessary, we can extend the meeting time. So with your consent, Mr. Tan, we will not discuss your proposed item on SWD's standardized care needs assessment mechanism, and we'll take up Mr. Peter Cheung's proposed items on the coming tendering exercise. Next item, additional provision for Social Security recipients. At this juncture, please invite the officials to come in.
我呢就想嚟，因為我街頭有時我想講嘅，好嘛？你幫我處理下，唔好意思，我要處理街頭嘅事，因為代表啲團體講嘢。嗰個係其實嗰個家居照顧先係我喺寫家居照顧，因為冇收過，應該寫你。
好，歡迎政府嘅代表啦。
I'd like to welcome all government officials here. May I defer to the administration's team for an introduction to the paper? Please be succinct. Chairman, members, the FS proposed in its 2014-15 budget the provision of an extra payment to recipients of CSSA, OAA, OALA, and DA, including those who are on the Guangdong scheme, as a one-off measure. Let me briefly introduce what the measures would involve. This is a one-off measure to help people cope with the current financial pressure. A number of measures have been already been taken to help these needy people, and also in view of the economic prospect of the coming year, the FS would like to propose the following measures. For those who are on CSSA, we believe 1.2 million people would benefit from the measures. The financial implication of one-off payments is $2.674 billion. The funding funding proposal will be submitted to the Finance Committee of the Council for approval, subject to the passage of the Appropriation Bill 2014, and then the SWD would make necessary adjustment to its computer system to implement the proposal as soon as possible. Members, a reminder here. This is about funding. So please refer to Rule 83A regarding the need to declare your interest. If you have a direct or indirect interest, please declare. Do we have any questions? Mr. Tan Ka-Piu, I want the administration to explain point number 6. Please explain why you need to wait until the appropriation bill is passed before you can provide the extra 1 month payments. What are the grounds for this, and what is the financial or fiscal discipline involved? Well, this is a one-off relief measure. In the past years, it's been the practice that the government can only deploy the resources to implement the one-off measure after the passage of the Appropriation Bill 2014. We can only seek the funding approval of the FC after the passage of the bill. I don't understand. It's not in the budget. It's an additional one-off payment of 2 billion plus. It's not in the budget. So why do you have to wait for the passage of the appropriation bill before you can implement it? Are there good reasons for this? Or has it just been a practice? We don't know how long the filibuster will last. Well, over the years, the practice has been that we would wait after the passage of the appropriation bill before we seek funding approval of the FC, and that's no difference from the usual practice. Well, let's say if the appropriation bill scrutiny is proceeding very slowly, and it's up to June. It's going to last until June. Are the recipients going to be affected, or are they going to get paid for June and July as well? Well, actually, some provisional funding has been provided to the government to sustain the relevant programs before the appropriation bill is passed. Of course, if we still have funds to spare, or if we have exhausted the provisional funding before the passage of the bill, that will be affected. That applies to all the payments.
That is to say, theoretically, if the appropriation bill is not passed before May or June, all the recipients expected to be benefited under these schemes would not receive the extra payment. Well, before the provisional funds runs out, well, I cannot say for sure, but unless the appropriation bill is passed in time, we cannot disperse the payments. As I understand, after passing the budget, they would have to submit the proposal to FC for funding. So this will not be withdrawn. This will only be postponed, right? Yes. Any other questions? Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Thank you, Chairman. Now I have a question about the extra CSSA, which is a one-off payment. Comparing to last year, this year the payment is less. I mean, the funding involved is less. Last year it was some $1.3 billion for CSSA. This year it's only $1.2 billion. So what is the reason? And also, for 8 consecutive years, the Hong Kong government has been dispersing the extra payment equivalent to 1 month of the allowances. Does it really reflect that our people cannot sustain on the allowances? So should the government adjust the level of payment of these allowances rather than continuing with the runoff measures for 8 consecutive years? P.S. As Financial Secretary pointed out in his budget speech, the amount would have to be adjusted based on the economic situation and the fiscal position of the government. This is a one-off relief measure, although we have had one-off relief measures for a number of years. And still, it's at the discretion of the Financial Secretary, and it is not the same as the recurrent funding. And I'll defer to my colleague for the other part of the question. This is part of the estimates, and it has to do with the decrease in the amount of funding required for CSSA. Any other questions? If not, I'd like to seek members' views on this item, because this will be submitted to FC for approval. Any objection? If not, then in principle we endorse and support the government in submitting the proposal to FC for funding. All right, next item. Item 4, progress report on the production of the best practice manual for non-governmental organizations receiving lump sum grant subvention. So let's invite the administration representatives in first. So let's welcome representatives from the administration. Perhaps Director can briefly take us through the paper, and please be succinct, and then we will have a discussion on it. All right, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Let me brief you on the paper. This paper is on the best practice manual for NGOs. In 2008, the independent committee submitted a review report detailing 36 recommendations to improve the lump sum grant subvention system, LSGSS. Just a few points. The Social Welfare Department has started work on the best practice manual since 2010, and we have engaged various parties. We have had representatives from government departments and representatives from the labor sector, users, independent members, and also the community. So various groups were represented in devising this BPM. And there are two levels, level 1 and 2 of the BPM. The purpose is to enhance transparency and disclosure of information. And first of all, for the first level, these are the rules that NGOs should follow. And level 2 is applicable to public or government organizations. Now we have agreed with 14 items, and for the remaining items we will continue with our discussion. I won't go into details, but in para 11, let me highlight that we're able to formulate this BPM now, and we would like to give time for NGOs to review their existing policies, modified or build up some arrangements and share experience, etc. So with the consensus of the committee, we would allow a 3-year period of implementation, because the purpose is not to punish NGOs, but to encourage them to comply with the BPM. So much for my presentation. All right, let me have a show of hands. How many members would like to ask questions? Mr. Tan Ka-pyo and Dr. Fernando Zhou. Thank you, Chairman. On page 3 and page 4 of the paper, I see altogether there are 14 consensus items at level 1 and level 2. I think the 4 most important items, including salaries and policies and abuse of term contracts, etc. I think these items really pinpoint the problems, and they directly affect how the NGO staff and social workers view their occupation. Most of them don't see their work as social workers being professional. And for example, the Family Services Center and the Home Affairs units They treat it as the dumping ground. They don't see any prospect. So what about the 4 items? What is the timetable? Will there be a possibility that these 4 items will not be included in level 1 or level 2? And what is the reason for failing to come up with a consensus? Director. Thank you, Chairman. In terms of salary or remuneration, I did not spend time on it just now, but one important point was that pay adjustment was viewed as very important by members from both the employer sector and the labor sector. And we have reached consensus on this point, and that's in part 6 or point 6 of the best practice manual in appendix of the paper, appendix 3 of the paper. As for pay policy, transfer and termination with regard to time-defined contracts, how should these matters be dealt with? Now, it's not the case that representatives from the labor sector or NGOs consider this not feasible. This can be included at level 2 as a starting point. However, the labor sector would like to include it at level 1 at its initial stage first. When these items are implemented, the NGOs would need to consider their financial implications, and time should be given. And as pointed out in the paper, a working group has been set up. The working group comprises members from various sectors. We have members from government departments, from labor unions, service users, and independent members. And they will continue to discuss these 4 items. However, our colleagues also agree that since we have been able to reach consensus on 14 items, they should be implemented as soon as possible. We have considered whether to wait for all 18 items or to roll out the 14 items first. We have had years of discussion before we were able to come up with the 14 consensus items. All right, Director, you talked about the general picture, but the key is if you only impose a key point requirement, the organizations may not be bold enough to make changes. This is also part of the discussion. Midpoint. This has never been the government's intention. The purpose of adopting a midpoint was to make calculations, and that also will be included in their discussion. Next, Dr. Fernando Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. This lump sum grant subvention system is a disaster of the welfare sector. When I joined this council in 2004 as a member of the welfare sector, I heavily criticized the government, and it's been years. In 2008, the government agreed to set up a committee to have a review, and then there was a review report in 2010, and followed by discussion for 4 years on corporate governance, communication, etc., human resources management, etc. Some rules should be set. Now the items are divided at level 1 and level 2. The purpose of the BPM should be to improve services so that the needy groups can be assisted by NGOs funded by public money. This is the basic principle. However, the role of service users is by and large hidden in the BPM. Any BPM or items in the BPM with the wording of service users are actually put under level 2 instead of level 1. For example, corporate governance and accountability, communication, that's at level 2. And let me read it out. There should be an efficient communication channel so that the organization can collect views from staff and users on the use of funding. This is just a principle, and yet this is put under level 2, meaning that it is not mandatory that it be followed. And let me read out another one on page 14 in the Chinese version. On major decisions made by the management, the NGO should consult service users and staff on major decisions. Again, this is put under level 2. That is, that there's no requirement on building a basic channel of communication. And Chairman, what is meant by that? They are going to try out this BPM for 3 years, and after which the NGOs would review the practice, so on and so forth. Does it mean that it's up to NGOs to decide whether to follow the level 2 items or not? It's up to the NGOs to decide whether to communicate with the colleagues or not. Director. Now, about the 2 points mentioned by Dr. Fernando Cheung in our discussion, we also believe that these were important points. However, for the best practice manual, it covers the government and service users, etc., and we must reach a consensus. Now, on the decisions on important management matters and communication, so far we have included them at level 2 as a starting point. We will not rule out the possibility of upgrading it to level 1, because some NGOs may also be involved not only in the welfare services but also in education, etc. So we need to consider further whether we should review the BPM in this regard. Now, and the BPM has all along included service users, and there have been special or specific consultation sessions. Now, in fact, we have under level 1 a requirement that the NGOs should give materials or make materials available to service users to evaluate the service. But what is the meaning of that? The NGOs should be accountable to service users. You can't say that it's not convenient to do it at the moment. You talk about healthcare and education, but you don't need feedback from users in these two fields. So I think it's outrageous. All these items under level 2 should be put under level 1 instead. I think in the discussion process there were suggestions to include all items under level 1. But the point is there had not been any consensus on some of the items. Some items aren't even put under level 2 at the moment. Now, about the points raised by Dr. Fernando Cheung, I think we need to have a meeting, a meeting with representatives from the government, service users, the welfare sector, etc. In order to do something, I think even if the government agrees with our view today, we also need the engagement of other stakeholders. Mr. Peng Siu-ping. Para 13 of the paper states that should there be I mean, if the NGO cannot meet the level 1 requirements, the SWD will examine the circumstances and consider measures to enable the NGO concerned to meet the requirements, and the SWD will, if necessary, report to the Lump Sum Grant Subvention Committee for steer. So what is the set of criteria for doing so? I just wanted to know more about it. Director, thank you, Mr. Poon, for your question. In fact, in Chapter 2 of the BPM, we have included the flow of implementation, and the consensus reached by the sectors and the steering committee is that every October the NGO would submit a self-evaluation or self-assessment form, and we do encourage NGOs to submit their self-assessment checklist in October. If some level 1 requirements are not met by the NGOs, the first step is for the SWD to discuss with them and see how we can help them. We understand that they may not be able to implement all the requirements at once. For issues that remain unresolved after rounds of discussion, they will be flagged for the committee's attention for their steer. If it's of the committee's view that this is a complex case with far-reaching implications and may not be worthwhile for the committee to spend much time to discuss it, we will be setting up a working group for the purpose. We hope that through the setting of a working group, we can engage various parties in order to come up with a solution.
潘兆平議員有冇追問？
即係換句説話，即係最後就由個小組委員會去再。
So it's up to the group to decide whether the matter should be referred back to the steering group, or would the small committee, the committee itself, would just make a decision. Well, whatever decision is made, will have to be reported back to the steering group, which comprise representatives from different parties, different sectors. So it will be referred back for discussion by the steering committee. Mr. Albert Chan, well, I'm not a member of this panel. We have been criticizing the lump sum grant system for many years. I have to criticize Dr. Law Chi Kong for his support for the system, for the lump sum grant system. So he betrayed social workers and welfare recipients because you are encouraging the organizations to treat the senior people well, but not the frontline people. Their pay dropped significantly. Now things have improved a little bit after much criticism has been leveled. Now you want to come up with the best practice manual to monitor the senior management people of these organizations. Well, I did not want to discuss such a manual because you did it for many, many years, and you provide the subvention in accordance with pay scales. So that's the case with the education sector. So if the Democratic Party is in favor of doing this for the social welfare sector, would you not suggest that it be applied to the education system? If Dr. Law Chi Kong thinks that this is good for quality, then why don't you implement it in the education sector? Because it's just the same. In the past, a school and a social welfare organization will be treated the same. You are going to get your pay in accordance with professional qualifications and pay scales and experience. And now you have brought disaster to the social welfare sector, not just the frontline social workers, but for the clerical staff and subordinates as well. Well, I hope the social welfare sector would amend its ways. The administration should cancel this lump sum grant system. In order to do justice, I think it's a waste of time to come up with this so-called best practice manual to monitor the management of these welfare organizations. They treat themselves very well. They go on overseas visits. They decorate their offices lavishly. The benefits go to senior people at the expense of frontline social workers. I'll give you a minute to respond. Director, Mr. Chan describes this system as a disaster to the social welfare sector. Well, back in 2008, there was an independent review. There were re-interviews and studies conducted by various parties. And the findings are that the sector has improved a lot, especially from the perspective of the service recipients. Well, if this is a good system, why don't you dare to implement it in schools, in the education sector? Well, the sector comprises a few parties, and the service recipients are one of them. Well, if this is a good system, why don't the political parties support you for its introduction into the education sector? The same parties do not agree that this be applied to the education sector. Well, I think you are trying to bully the helpless social workers, and the same is true of shameless political parties. Director, well, I think the independent review has already taken care of such views. In 2000, he ran his election as a Democratic Party member. It was introduced in 2000. I think he got the benefits and ran away. He ran on this platform, on the platform of the party. Well, in 2000, he ran as a Democratic Party member. Well, if he did not agree, he should have resigned. He shouldn't have received our funding support. Let's return to the item. Well, all you can do is to act fierce. This is not your time to speak. The Democratic Party is shameless. You have to. You don't shout because you received the funding support and then you left. Mr. Albert Chan, go away. Mr. Albert Chan, your speaking time has been exhausted. Please stop. I don't think you should have two different groups. If or two parts. If it's a best practice manual, well, you should have the same requirements. And if some of them cannot be done, then individual organizations should write a report and explain why. You refer to a number of principles which I think should be important principles, communication and so on and so forth. For example, page 10, optimum reserve level. These things would attract disagreement, because what is optimal is a matter of opinion. The people working in the sector used to criticize that the organization they work for should not show up so much in reserve, thus affecting the service provision. Excessive reserve is considered by many as too conservative. You talk about principles pertaining to the use of reserve. And then you talk about level 2, optimal level of reserve. But the two are in conflict. Why don't you combine the two levels? And then if some organizations cannot implement this, they should explain. And also we should have a public hearing. The service providers, the staff, and also the recipients of service should be invited to express their views. Director, why do we have two parts or two levels? The Independent Review Committee proposed this because we hope the best practice manual will be agreed to by the 5 parties represented in the steering committee. We hope all these can be carried out by the sector. Whatever we can implement, we would like to get it implemented immediately. As regards whether we need to consult other people, if you refer to Annex 1 of the paper, you know that we have many consultation sessions, meetings, and so on and so forth for the past years. So many of the views expressed by all the 5 parties concerned have been reflected in the manual. Mr. Tiam Yu Chung. Well, the lump sum grant has been implemented for more than 10 years. Back then, we gave our agreement. We agreed because we wanted to give the organizations flexibility. But from time to time, there are controversial issues on how this is implemented. Especially there are views from frontline people. But I do not agree with Mr. Albert Chan that all the senior management people of NGOs in the sector are scrupulous, or they just try to fatten their own purse at the expense of their subordinates. I don't agree. But of course, the system should be reviewed and improved from time to time. And now the review committee has come up with the best practice manual. I understand this to be the result of consultation with the 5 parties. What is disappointing is that the number one concern has not been the subject of a consensus, and that is about pay and conditions of employment. Before the consensus on the 4 items can be reached, would the best practice manual be implemented? On the 4 items related to the pay and conditions of service, how will the review committee resolve the problems? And the organizations, the NGOs, have to submit a list of issues, a checklist of issues on the staff assessment. Would it have any direct bearing on the funding level? First question, on the 4 items where no consensus have been reached, are we going to implement those? Well, we need to discuss with the sector. It's already a feat to have consensus on the 14 items, and we would like to implement this in the middle of this year. And before that, there will be a big briefing session for the NGOs. We'll try to implement those first, gain some experience, and continue the discussion with the remaining 4. If the NGOs submit a checklist on what they can and cannot do, then we would take up with the NGOs and discuss the difficulties, discuss the ways to overcome the difficulties, and if we have any outcome arising from the discussion, we'll come back to the panel to brief members. All right, anyone for the first round? If not, then I think it's my turn. The best practice manual has undergone a very uneasy process, and it's not easy to get the progress so far. I think the department understand that members have strong views about the non-inclusion of pay and condition of employment in the 2 levels. I agree with Mr. Albert Ho that either is pursuable or is not. We don't need 2 levels.
So I hope that when Director briefs the NGOs, views of this panel will also be reflected to these organizations. They should not just look after their or to look at things from their perspective. They should consider the whole platform. Throughout the years, this is what the LegCo, this panel has observed on staff remuneration. For example, if no starting point can be, or salary structure with a starting point could be provided to staff, that is a major problem, because the SWD provides a midpoint salary for reference to these organizations. And so far, many NGOs are still offering pays lower than the starting point to their staff, and this is a major problem. And as mentioned by another member, there is also a problem with the level of reserve. We understand that for some organizations, the level of reserve is so high that every year they are required to refund part of the money to the government, and this is a problem with their governance, and it's because of the lack of openness. We are unable to monitor them, and the sum eventually goes back to the government. In fact, there will be a win-win situation if the sum can be utilized properly, so that staff can get the pay they want, and service users can receive the service, receive better services. I think the government should find out why there is an issue here. So my first question is this. Now there are 4 outstanding items. Say within a year or so, within a short period of time, will you be able to implement these 4 items? And also for level 1 and level 2 items, do you have a timetable for organizations to give you a response on whether they have implemented the items? Thirdly, Now the midpoint salary is 6.8% of the midpoint, or rather the contribution rate is 6.8%. However, for some organizations, they make 5% contribution for staff who earns less than $24,000, and only when the staff gets more than $24,000 would they use the other contribution rate, and this is unreasonable. It's capped at 5%, and this is unreasonable, and the government should follow up on it. I'm sorry, Deputy Chairman. Time is up. Wait for the next round. Next round, Dr. Fernando Zhang, 2 minutes. Well, we won't further argue the lump sum grant system. But in fact, for this best practice menu is a toothless tiger. Even for this toothless tiger, you separate the items into 2 levels to implement one level first. But all these items are just very basic. Let me read out, for example, on page 14, the NGOs should provide a documentation on the structure of their organization, and they should also make available these documents for checking by staff, and yet this is still regarded as level 2, that is not mandatorily required to be followed. I don't know why. These are very simple and basic matters. The government should be in the lead. You control the use of public money, and you should set some principles. Don't just tell us that if the discussion is not fruitful, wait for another year and wait for 2 or 3 years. And Chairman, I have a motion. Should I read it out now? Let's wait. We're not dealing with it at the moment. My suggestion is to combine level 1 and level 2 and make them mandatory requirements for implementation immediately. And the BPM has not included salary package policy, which is regrettable. We can't see any sincerity in formulating the BPM to improve the system and enhance the services. Next, Deputy Chairman, Mr. Chan Kwok-chi, 2 minutes, second round. I think I've asked a question. I will allow Director to respond to my question in the first round. Then definitely the view of this panel will be reflected to organizations. As for the refund of excessive reserve, now the reserve of an organization is capped at 25% of the operational expenditure of the year. We encourage the organization to use the reserve prudently to improve the pay conditions of the staff and to help them develop. As for the outstanding items, we will not drag our feet. As said in the paper, we will be setting up a working group on the 4 items. As for the 14 consensus items, the working group will also start discussing the implementation immediately. As for the arrangement for combining level 1 and level 2, our idea is that in October the organization will be required to submit their review on the implementation, and for difficulties facing them, we will have an idea. We will collect the checklist in October Following that, we will conduct an analysis and report back to members. My colleague would like to supplement on the refund of reserve. It's capped at 25%, and every year not many organizations were required to do so. Now, when they applied for keeping the reserve to be carried forward to next year, we usually allow them to do so. So the overall speaking, the sum involved is not very high. So we will proceed with the motion. Now, members, I think you have in front of you Dr. Fernando Zhang's motion. Dr. Zhang, my motion is simple. The lump sum grant subvention system has brought huge negative impact on the social welfare sector. And level 1 and level 2 of the best practice manual are all basic governance principles. They should be implemented on a mandatory basis immediately, and they should be subject to public scrutiny. Non-NGO boards should also include members from or representatives from staff and service users to enhance communication and governance. Any other comments? Director. Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Zhang's motion suggests that it should be implemented on a mandatory basis. Now, we have discussed the BPM for a number of years because we need a consensus from various parties before the NGOs are even capable of implementing the items. It is not feasible to mandate them to do so. That's why we spent so much effort in putting our heads together to come up with the 14 consensus items. Having worked on the issues and discussed for many years, we have reached a consensus. If this is implemented on a mandatory basis at this stage, I think that you might not achieve the effect you want. I want to correct one thing. This is a set of guidelines or BPM. It's not a piece of legislation. It's not the same. Now, Mr. Ho, please allow me to handle this. Now, Director, we have proceeded to dealing with the motion. Because we still have some time left, we're now to make a comment, but the debate should have been taken place earlier. So everyone gets 1 minute to express your views, and then this will be put to a vote. Mr. Albert Ho, I just want to emphasize one point. This is not a primary legislation or subsidiary legislation. This is a best practice manual. If an NGO cannot follow the requirements under the BPM, it will have to be reported to the SWT, and that's that. Very simple. And some haven't even been included in the BPM, and now it will be dragged on for 3, 4, or even 5 years. I don't see any sincerity.
Deputy Chairman, I thank the Director for her comments. The motion's wording aims at pointing out the concern of this panel, and that the NGOs, some NGOs, have been acting unreasonably. We are trying to help the government do the job properly. I understand the administration would like all NGOs to comply with the level 1 measures or recommendations. But some of them are not even able to do that, and that's why we want to move a non-binding motion to help you. The wording or the motion itself is not going to bind the government's action, but we just want to show our concern to those NGOs. So you have two groups or two levels. Level 1 is mandatory. The second one is something you encourage them to adopt. But there's no way you can make level 1 mandatory. It's really self-contradiction. And our motion calls for stronger action to be taken, and still you don't want to do it. It's really a self-contradiction. Do you agree with everything in level 1 and level 2? If so, why don't you do something to get them implemented? A few things. Please be quick. On the questions raised by Mr. Leung, well, there are 18 items in level 1 and level 2. We agree that for the second of the 4 items in level 2, it should be the goals that we pursued and the goals for NGOs. We cannot make it mandatory because under the lump sum system, there are different structures, different development patterns. Some NGOs have already implemented the items under level 2, some have not. We have to bear in mind that the NGOs concerned are not the same, and therefore we need to have 2 levels. Mr. Chen Hangpan, with regard to the mesh recommendations to step up monitoring and transparency, of course I don't disagree. Well, the list has been there for years. There are new NGOs doing meaningful work. For example, NGOs catering for the needs of patients suffering from dementia. They are not subvented, but they have been working very hard. Maybe this is a little bit of digression. I hope the director would review the coverage of subvention. You should review this list of subvented organizations, because outside the list of subvented NGOs, there are new organizations not getting any subvention. Please give the director a few seconds to reply. For non-subvented NGOs, we look at individual service items, and we would try to cover more as far as possible. So this is already put under review. Mr. Frankie Yip. Well, I'm in favor of stepping up monitoring of these NGOs, and they should be more transparent. As regards the motion moved by Dr. Fernando Cheung, I have some reservation, and that is to say the board of the NGO should have representatives from staff and service users. Well, I have reservations, but I do agree that the overall direction to go is to enhance monitoring and transparency. And now you have 2 levels in the manual, and then you give them 3 years, and you don't know whether the recommendations will be implemented as a matter of mandatory requirement. That's too much. That's too lenient. But I cannot support the motion because of the concern concerning the composition of NGO boards. I have 2 minutes. I want to give something for the administration to consider. Under the school-based management system, the boards, the school boards have to allow the representatives of parents and alumni to sit on the board. Some church organizations, some school-sponsoring church organizations are against this. But we hope that the boards should be widely represented. I have to declare my interest as a member of a school board. I hope the government will consider doing this for the social welfare sector. On the board composition, under the guidelines, we require some channel of communication to be kept. And there's a comment that the many will be implemented in 3 years' time, and then we are waiting for different things to happen. Actually, they have to give us the checklist in October next year, and this will be implemented starting the middle of this year. So this would enhance the transparency very quickly. But the motion calls for the implementation of the level 2 recommendations. It's just not possible. But for the first level, for the level 1 recommendations, they will be implemented starting in the middle of this year. So this is a motion by Dr. Fernando Cheung. You may wish to offer comments on the views expressed. I thank you, Madam Chair, for pointing out that school sponsoring bodies must have teachers' representatives and parents' representatives on the school board. So actually, I'm not asking anything new in the latter part of my motion. I just want to align the governance structure in the education sector and the social welfare sector. I'm just disappointed by the government's lack of clear stance on this. You just want them to discuss some principles, and if the consensus is reached, is good, and we cannot, no consensus can be reached, you allow them more time. Well, we want you to have something basic, for example, email or letterbox for collection of views from their people, their staff. This is put under level 2, and that is to say it's going to be implemented 3 years later. For those in favor of Dr. Fernando Cheung's motion, hands up, please. Thank you. So apart from Mr. Yik, are you going to abstain? Okay. Apart from Mr. Yik, all other members are in favor of Dr. Fernando Cheung's motion, so the motion's passed. Understand that you have spent years to bridge the gap between the different parties, but please also heed our advice and our views. Thank you, members, and thank you, officials. The motion is passed, and now on that point. Okay, we have another one. And that is, we have another one on private or New Day Activity Center in Sham Shui Po. We haven't invited any deputations in respect of this best practice manual. Maybe we cannot do it within this term, but we can do it in the next term and invite them to come to talk with us on the difficulties they face. Okay?
早晨。
Good morning. Members, this is about a funding proposal. So I will have to remind members under Rule 83A of our Rules of Procedure, and that's the subject of a reminder under item 3 on the agenda already.
好嘛，由官員介紹下呢份文件，唔該晒。
好啊。So please introduce the paper. You have 5 minutes. This paper seeks member support for the government's proposal to set up in Cheung Sha Wan Estate, Sham Shui Po, a new day activity center cum hostel for severely mentally handicapped persons, and support the hostel for mentally handicapped persons. Well, such a rehabilitation places in short supply and great demand. There are 2 types. Hostel for severely mentally handicapped persons. These are people who cannot care for themselves, who need constant care. As for supported hostel, well, it provides a family type hostel for those who can take care of themselves. We're also going to increase the day activity center places. These places are provided to the persons with severely mental handicap, with day care and activities services. We'll continue to find more sites for new facilities, and we're also going to reserve sites in new development areas for the provision of new service units, and we also expand the facilities on private land so as to increase the number of places available. For this particular item, at the planning stage, we reserved the premises for this day activity center. And we can set up the DAC come HSMH and SHOS. There will be 50 places for the DAC and also 50 places for the HSMH, as well as 50 additional places for the supported hostel for mentally handicapped persons. We expect that the places can be made available for service recipient in 2015. And we have been given a funding of $22.948 million by the Lottery Fund Advisory Committee, and among that 20.806 million will be for fitting works, and another 2.412 million for acquisition of furniture and equipment. The proposal has the support of the Sum Shui Po District Council. We'd like the panel support so that we can seek the Finance Committee's approval for the allocation from the LF to meet the capital costs of the proposed project. Mr. Tam Yu Chung, of course, we support the proposal. As the administration puts it, the demand is great, and it's been trying to find more sites. We must get more information on the development plan and on the expansion of facilities and places. And then these hostels are now covered by a licensing scheme. It seems that you cannot buy more places from existing operators because many of them cannot meet the licensing requirements. So it's important that you try to find more sites to build more facilities. But what about existing service providers? How can you help them enhance their service quality so that they can meet the standards required for under your bought place system?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We understand that the queue is long, including the hostel for severely mentally handicapped persons that proposed this time. We understand that some 2,200 of them are still on the waiting list. And from now till 2017-2018, in relation to the hostel for severely mentally handicapped persons, we are going to provide 896 more. And we have a special scheme in relation to expansion projects and sites for redevelopment. We have additional 607 places which will be made available. Apart from these two prongs, we will continue to look for sites to increase places to cope with the demand. As for the point made by Mr. Tam for private hostels, through the pilot scheme, we bought 300 places. After conducting the review, we're going to relax some requirements. For example, the cap will be increased from 55 to 70%. So our target will be to increase from 300 to 450 places. And the subsidized amount under the board place scheme may be adjusted to tie in with the market conditions. And through the subsidized scheme, we will subsidize private hostels to upgrade their requirements, to upgrade their fire service installations and other facilities. Of course, subsidized places will be the core. At the same time, we also hope that private homes of qualities can be developed to meet the demand. Now, without government's help, it's difficult to have private homes of quality. Even if the facilities are built, not many can afford them. So you should consider how or in what form subsidies can be provided so as to increase their service standards to benefit the severely mentally handicapped persons. Some wait as long as 9 years, 105 months on the waiting list. It's very undesirable. Please work harder. Thank you for your view, and we're actively reviewing the details of the board place scheme, and we will actively explore other ways of improving the scheme. Mr. Poon Siu Ping. I support the paper. I have some questions. Para 10 of the paper sets out details of the new facilities, and it will be occupying Unit 101 and 301 with a total floor area of 1,705 square meters. What other facilities will be included in the area? Now, in the annex, it sets out the average waiting time for hostels for severely mentally handicapped persons. 105 months, that's the average waiting time. Will the administration consider setting a target for shortening the waiting time? It's difficult to find other hostels or places. Will you set a target, say, to shorten it to 3 years of waiting time? Commissioner. Now, about the facilities block, the SWD will have the priority. Apart from the rehabilitation facilities, there will also be a district center to support the disabled, and also another elderly care center. Of course, we'd like to shorten the waiting time as far as possible, but by how far? We have difficulties because the choice of home or hostel would affect the applicant's waiting time. Say if the applicant prefers a particular district, the waiting time may be longer. If the applicant has no preference on districts, however, the waiting time will be shorter. Of course, we do consider the number of persons on the waiting list. And for the HSMH, it's about 2,200 or so. And from now till 2017-18, and there will be some 896 and also some 600 plus under the special scheme. And apart from these, we will, in the long run, look for opportunities to earmark sites in redevelopment projects, and also by converting the use of existing premises or vacant premises, and we will continue to do that. We hope to try to meet the keen demand. Thank you, Commissioner. However, Mr. Poon asked a very clear question. He asked whether you have a timetable concerning the waiting time. You haven't answered him. Thank you, Mr. Poon. in deciding by how far we can shorten the waiting time, we do have some difficulties. On the one hand, we are actively looking for sites. On the other hand, we are reviewing our the situation. For example, the disabled are aging, and the facilities for the disabled and elderly people are aging, and this affects the waiting time. Say for the HSMH, the turnover rate used to be higher, now it's getting slower, and this affects demand and supply. As for day activity center or sheltered workshops, the service model may have to be changed because some of the service users are getting older. So we need to review our service model, and that is why the advisory committee has set up a working group to tackle the problem of aging persons with severely mental incapacity or handicap, and we need to collect some data to look at the actual situation. We also understand that the number of applicants on the waiting list is rising, and we therefore will actively identify more sites to provide more facilities to shorten the waiting time. Next, Dr. Fernando Zhang. 50 places, hostel places for severely mentally handicapped persons will be provided under this proposal, and another 50 for the day activity center. In fact, the 50 these are the same 50 people, and there will also be 20 places for SHOS. Now there are some 2,200 waiting for HSMH places on the waiting list. An additional 50 is good, but is still far from sufficient. In the paper, it said that the average waiting time is over 100 months. This is the average of all applicants' waiting time, including those on the urgent queue. If you look at the various districts, apart from Chunwan, Kwaichong, Qingyi, for almost all other districts, the date of application for places for HSMH was as early as 1999. 15 years. How many 15 years do we have? That is, from the time they were assessed to be eligible to be put on the waiting list for the homes, they needed to wait for 15 years for a place to be allocated. We are such an advanced economy. We really need to reflect on ourselves why we're treating families with mentally handicapped persons in such a manner. Just an additional 50 places is far from sufficient in addressing the needs of the community. I need to declare, perhaps, that my daughter is also using the service of a DAC. Many families do not want to send their children to a hostel. The hostel is the last resort. Only when we run out of options will we send our children to the hostel. However, for the 50 places of DAC, we're not eligible because the DAC places would be linked to the HSMH places. There are 400 or so applicants for DAC only. They prefer DAC only instead of DAC cum HSMH. However, for the places provided recently, the majority of them are linked to or are tied with HSMH. I have asked this question many times, why can't you be more flexible? If I don't want a hostel place, there is no chance for me to wait for a day activity center place. And there are also some 13 or 1,400 applicants waiting for a supported hostel place. In fact, for the supported hostel HSOS, there is no need for it to be adjacent to or located in the same building of the hostel. You can, and I can foresee that the demand for a supported hostel would be on the rise as the carers age, so on and so forth. Commissioner, 3 questions. Now I will answer the questions in general, and I'll defer to my colleague to answer you on specific points. Thank you, Dr. Zhang, for your comments. Our direction is also the same. For parents of mentally handicapped children, they also would not send the children to the hostel unless they have no alternatives. And we understand the situation, and we've tried to improve things. For example, for the home-based care for PWD, we have enhanced the scheme, costing over 200 million. On the other hand, we have regularized the subsidies for those with severe physical handicap, and for the 1,293 applicants waiting for a supported hostel, there will be 1,036 more by 2017-18, and there will also be 1,201 for DA under the special schemes. And you can see that we will be developing more DACs. As for whether we can provide more DAC places for those living in the community, not in the hostel, whether we can shorten the queue, we'll try our best. As for as said just now, we have over 1,600 places planned under the special schemes. At present, we have some 2,200 on the waiting list, and I will continue to try our best.
Dr.
Zhang, if you wish, you can join the queue for the second round. Mr. KK Fong, I don't think anyone here will be against the idea of building more hostels for years. We have made the same request again and again, and the administration has never promised to do it. How long do we have to wait until we have a roadmap, a timetable? Current waiting time is what? 100 months plus. So it's a waiting time of 9 years. It's impossible for us, a handicapped person, to wait for so long. There must be a plan. Let's say it's 9 years. How can you reduce the waiting time from 9 years to something, say, 3 years, like the public housing allocation? So it's faster to get a public rental housing unit if the handicapped person is waiting with his parents. The family will get a PRH first before the handicapped person can get a place in a hostel. So how can you reduce the waiting time? Well, this center is just next to my constituency. The current district councillor is a member of my party, ADPL. As Mr. Feng is in the paper, maybe the commissioner can reply. No need for a reply now. I don't have time. Of course, you have to talk to the HA. For example, a certain percentage of premises in a PRH will be allocated for hostels, whether for handicapped persons or elderly people. The waiting time is long across the board, whether you're talking about hostels for the handicapped persons with disabilities, or the elderly. You don't have sufficient sites. And also you can ask the administration to reserve a certain percentage of space in private housing estates for such hostels. There's one in my constituency, 2 stories in a private building, earmarked for hostels. You can't leave it to the free market. Well, of course, it's good for you. You don't have to work hard. Commissioner, as I've said, in terms of the timetable, is affected by many factors. So it's difficult to set a timetable now. But as I have answered other questions, we are looking at the waiting list, and we are very open in letting people know the number of applicants on the waiting list and the number of places to be made available. Are you going to do any planning about this? As regards consultation, as we set out in the document, we consulted the Sum District Council on this particular project back in 2008, and we're not talking about new sites. All the social welfare facilities have been well planned in advance, and because we need to provide places for the PWDs and the elderly as a matter of priority. So we have this new facility in a new development, and we also earmarked the provision of premises in new housing projects. I was asking for central planning. I have to be strict about my time. Please give me back my time. I have a question. You have wasted 20 seconds of my time. Give me back my 20 seconds. Don't interrupt me. You have not promised to do some planning. For example, land size for PRH and private housing estates. Well, you haven't consulted the residents. You have consulted the district councils for the new facilities. That's not the same. Well, we can only give everyone 4 minutes now. So if you want to ask questions, please ask short questions. You want to offer comments, by all means. I respect your choice. I want to follow up the question raised by Mr. KK Fong. Maybe the Commissioner can answer the question on planning. I think it's difficult for you to plan, but the proposed planning mechanism from Mr. Fong is easier to implement, and that is for new housing estates should provide a certain percentage of premises, say 5% of the units, should be used for welfare or home-related facilities. Maybe the Commissioner can respond to that suggestion. Dr. Fernando Zhang mentions the question of day activity centers. Well, this is not the first time the question is raised. Can we get an answer, please? Do you have any day-only places for DAC applicants? And what about the demand of severely mentally handicapped persons? The waiting time is approaching 9 or 10 years. If you don't have sufficient number of places, you need to buy places. But you don't buy a lot of places for severely mentally handicapped persons. Very few indeed. Why don't you review the mechanism under the board play schemes? I defer to my colleague from the SWD on the question of DAC and DAC within are tied to hostels. We have 480 applicants who would like to have a DAC only, but 805 would like to have both hostel and DAC services. Since the demand is bigger in the latter category, we have to find ways to satisfy that. For DAC, we have 1,036 and 996 places. So we have some 140 for the day activity services. Of course, it's not sufficient, but satisfying the demand is not easy. The SWD maintains close liaison with other departments in planning the provision of places, such as the housing department, the lands department. When the government grants land for public and private housing projects, and also the urban renewal projects, we will look into the needs of the SWD. And as far as possible, welfare facilities will be incorporated in the development projects. As regards how much can be provided in each project, we'll look at the relevant parameters, the poor ratio, for example, of the site in question, and we'll also assess other needs such as the housing need. As far as possible, we will ask the developer or the development agent to provide more space for such facilities. Mr. Leung Ji-Chung. Thank you, Madam Chair. These facilities for disabled people, especially for those with a severe mental handicap, is supported by all. It's best that you implement it as quickly as you can. Turning to Mr. KK Fong's suggestion, well, I've always advocated the same, and that is in new housing estates, especially new public housing estates, the government, the SWD, should plan for the provision of such facilities in the planning stage. Above my ward office in Tsuen Shou Wai, there's a hostel for severely mentally handicapped. The residents do not object to its presence. If the departments concerned can work together, we can provide more facilities, and the problem can be lessened. Or do you have sufficient manpower to provide the service? When we're talking about hostel staff, service providers, it seems to me that the recruitment of staff for hostels for severely mentally handicapped persons is not easy. The SWD should come up with a suitable training arrangement. The government should provide more hostels for the elderly and for PWDs. But manpower can be a stumbling block. So what can you do in terms of manpower? Who will take this question? Well, thank you, Mr. Leung, for your question. Apart from land, manpower is a big concern that we need to plan for well in advance. As for the supplementary healthcare workers, i.e. nurses, workers, and physiotherapists have to be trained. We have tried to increase the number of training places in universities. For example, physiotherapists, we have increased the number of places annually from 40 to 76, and in another category to 100, from 70 something to 100. We have a special program, a master's program, offered by the Poly University. 30 occupational therapists and 30 physiotherapists have been trained up to alleviate the supply shortage. And we have been working with other bodies to train up more nurses. And we hope that these nurses, after training, will work in the welfare sector. And as mentioned in the current policy address, we will try to attract more entrants based on the qualification framework arrangements. We have 1,000 places for on-the-job training. And it's hoped that we can attract more young people to enter this particular field. Mr. Leung Yu-chung, Madam Chair, you have been in this post for many years. I suppose you are very experienced about all these matters. Ideally, before population intake of a new housing estate, the hostel should already be there, and then the housing department will tell the new residents before allocation that the facilities will be there. This would reduce the problematic cases. Well, very often the opposition does not come from LegCo members, and they tend to come from residents. If residents are as nice as those living near Mr. Leung Chi-chung's office, that is of course very good. It's best that you inform the residents before they move into a new housing estate. Otherwise, what are you going to do if the residents react strongly to the facility?
Second point is, we talked about planning just now. What we want is an indicator. How can you resolve the problem of a long waiting time? We understand, just like the Housing Authority, for PRH applicants waiting on the waiting list, the average waiting time is 3 years. We understand this is a false figure, but at least there should be indicator. You just tell us the average waiting time, you don't tell us the indicator. So how can you assess the work? So please tell us something like we reduce the waiting time every year by 10%. There must be some services. It's not zero. And what we want to know is whether the services are sufficient and whether they can address the demand. And you're unable to do that, so this year can you tell us, or when will you be able to tell us, Commissioner? Thank you, Mr. Leung Yu-chung. On district consultation, I'll defer to the SWD colleagues. On planning, I really thank you for your comment. When we're trying to see if we can set a target. However, we must bear in mind that we take a multi-pronged approach. We have home-based and community care services. These two types of development go in parallel. If community-supported services are good enough, then the demand for home care services should go down. There is no conflict in between. You don't have to elaborate on it. Now, just to pick up on the point, we are very transparent. We tell you the number of places and number of applicants on the waiting list. For example, we have 6,200 places this year, and there will be 8,000 more rehabilitation places. We keep all the information open, including the various forms of services and the number of places to be available. We set out all the figures. Of course, we must compare these figures with the number of applicants. All in all, we make all the information public. In a moment, I think we're still just 10 minutes away from the next agenda scheduled, so we have to quicken our pace. This is a funding proposal. I have to consult members' views. A line is drawn here. No more first round. For second round, I can only give you a minute or two. If you speak at length for the next item, I'm afraid there won't be enough time, and the next item is also a major issue. I've drawn a line for the first round, so my turn to ask question. Mr. Leung Yiu-chung, Poon Xiu-ping, or Leung Chi-chung, my deputy chairman, Peter Chung. We all ask the same question. Do you have the means? We help you resolve the problem. You can formulate a new policy. For example, 5% or 10% of all newly developed PRH or public housing should be allocated for the provision of care home service. Can something like that be set at the policy level, Commissioner? All the additional places, we keep all the information open if possible. For members' comments, we will take them back and consider very carefully. When will you give us a reply? When will you answer our questions? Because they're not new. I have been on a panel for a long time, and simply put, for new public housing developments, can space be reserved for facilities for PWDs or for the elderly? It can be decided at a policy level. You can give them better facilities. It would be nice. So I've asked the questions many times. Do you have a policy to look after the needs of the PWDs and the elderly? May I refer you to para 7 of the paper, be it new HA development or redevelopment in the urban district. We discuss actively with them and reserve space for rehabilitation services. Of course, we will carefully consider everyone's views. All right, second round. 1 minute. Leung Yiu-chung. What happens if you receive opposition at the district level? Secondly, for newly developed public housing developments, please make it a policy that a certain percentage of space should be reserved for facilities. Otherwise, it's pointless to tell us that you're transparent and open and you can give us all the figures. It's pointless. Just now, Madam Chair make a very strong point. When are you going to give us an indicator or a target? Since this is the former Cheung Sha Wan police quarters, we consulted the district council. All right, that's it. Your time is up. Next, Dr. Fernando Zhang. 1 minute. It's very reasonable to have an indicator we've been striving for it for so many years. However, nothing would come out of it. They can't have a target because they can't reach the target. They can only tell us that we'll keep working on it. We ask when this will be done. They just tell us that they will keep working on it. I don't know why or how long this game will last. They are shameless. What can we do, Madam Chair? They have the land, they have the money, but they're unwilling to do it. Even if we continue to press them. Well, anyways, a specific question. Now, setting aside the hostel, even for daycare activity center, the waiting time is very long for Tin Shui Wai, Chun Kwan O, etc. They wait for 8 years for just day activity center services. All right, time's up. There are long-standing problems yet to be resolved, and the Commissioner hasn't been able to answer our questions throughout the morning. So may I suggest that the item be put on the list of follow-up actions, and we ask the government whether it is possible to make it a policy that space be reserved for rehabilitation service facilities in new public housing developments. So this item will be kept for discussion by the panel in the next legislative year. I think it's time for us to put a vote on it. There is no conflict, but where the discussion goes and the decision of this funding related matter. So panel members are eligible to vote. Do we agree that this item be submitted to FC to set up a new DAC, HSMH and HSOS in Cheung Sha Wan Estate, Sham Shui Po? Those in favor, please raise your hand. Those against, please raise your hand. None. Those abstained, please raise your hand. None. So the majority of members support the proposal. And a word for the government. Please consider, when you report back to us, reserving a percentage of space in new public housing projects. Now, next item, rehousing matters relating to residential care home for the elderly, RCGs, including the privately run RCGs at Dill's Corner Garden, affected by the NENT development new NDA project.
Okay.
Let's invite the administration and the deputation in. Thank you. Okay, let's welcome Secretary for Labour and Welfare and PS for Development. We are waiting for deputations to come in. Some of the elderly people are wheelchair bound, so please be patient. Welcome all. The Secretariat staff will take you to your seats.
好啦，唔該晒嚇。
All right, thank you. Now, you will see that there's an earpiece in front of you, and there is also a panel with buttons. If you want to listen to the floor, that says Channel 0, and Channel 1's for Cantonese. If you want to a better quality, Channel 2 for English, and Channel 3 for Putonghua, and there is also a knob to adjust the volume. If you require assistance, please indicate to us, the Secretariat staff. May I welcome the Secretary and his team. So over to you, Secretary. Please be succinct. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members. Good morning, deputations. Now, in short, the government is very concerned about the prospect of the RCG at the Dales Corner Garden. We are all familiar with the background, which has to do with the Kutong North NDA development. And in the past, the Labour and Welfare Bureau, together with the Development Bureau, have been very concerned about this incident. We want to deal with the issue properly. The latest development is that to tie in with the Kutong North NDA's development, in the long run, the RCGs at the Dales Corner Garden will have to be cleared. The site can be made available for 13,000 PRH public housing units and 13,000 private units. At this 3,000 private housing units. At the same time, we're also concerned about RCG places. So, in this incident, first of all, we need the elderly people's well-being would be put first, and secondly, we'll minimize the impact on them. I won't go through the background again. The most important point is that we have to adopt an innovative thinking approach. Over the past year or so, under the lead of you, Madam Chairman, we have taken an active approach in seeking views from various parties, including RCG operators. We have 25 two-story buildings there, and 21 blocks of them have RCGs operated there, with 16 RCGs operated by 11 licensed operators. The latest figures, we have 958 residents are there, and some of them are under the board place scheme, subsidized by the SWD, and the latest figure stands at 297. As for the remaining 601 in private RCGs, some elderly people have undergone the standard assessment mechanism. That is, their physical conditions are eligible for the RCGs, and there are also 50 eligible for or waiting for a nursing home, and also some others for care and detention homes. These. And as for the remaining 551 residents in private homes, 77% of them are on CSSA, and these elderly people are CSSA recipients. We will not give up any elderly person. We try to help them regardless of which group they belong. So the way forward, to minimize the impact on them, we have thought out of the box for sites not required at the for the advanced works of the project. They will be kept for the time being. They will not be cleared, and then Mr. Chan will be saying more on the development project. Only when the site is for use when will the site be cleared. 21 blocks are now occupied by RCGs, 8 of which are for RCGs. 7 operators are running 8 RCGs there, and To minimize the impact, we will focus on phase 1, and as mentioned just now, we have 21 blocks and not more than 8 blocks will be affected.
And there are 4 government quarters among the 25 buildings. There are quarters for the discipline service. In 2018, we will only resume those required for advanced works. Others will be resumed in 2023. So the land will be fully resumed in 2023. So phase 1, 2018, phase 2, 2023. You may ask how many elderly people may be affected. According to SWD calculation, not more than 300. We have 958. So lower than 1/3 will be affected in the first phase. And we are trying hard to reduce the number of people affected. So we'll continue to work this. So this is the first thing that I want to mention. So 300 elderly people, or not more than 300 elderly people, will be affected by phase 1. And during the works period, 600 or so will remain for the second phase. And we'll build out all the necessary precautionary measures, such as noise barriers. But they will be adversely affected by noise and other nuisances. And the second breakthrough is that we want the elderly people to maintain their social group. They have been there for a long, long time. So at the Deuce, or at a distance 200 away from Deuce Corner Garden, it's just a 2 or 3 minute walk. We're trying to identify a site. We have something in mind. We are just working out the layout. We are going to provide a hostel with 1,100 places. A big hostel building will be built, and we're going to invite some operators to bid for the operation of the places on a contract basis. We hope there will be more than one operator, and they will be available. The places will be available not later than 2023. We'll strive to achieve that earlier than 2023. So those who are remaining can move to the new places. And we have to consider who are eligible and who are not. Some people are concerned that for those covered by the enhanced spot play scheme, they will be okay, because normally people staying in spot place hostels may not be eligible to go to a contract hostel, but we are willing to change this rule so that they will be eligible as a matter of course. And then there are also people who have been assessed to be frail, or they need to get nursing home places or care and attention home places. And if they have been assessed to be eligible, they don't have to wait anymore. They would move in to the new hostel right away. Before the new hostel comes on stream in 2023, and if someone has passed the assessment, they will be admitted. So when in 2023 the new hostels is able to take in new residents, and all qualified persons who are willing to move to the new hostels will be accepted. With this hostel providing more than 1,000 places, we're going to invite the operators who are now currently offering service at Deuce Corner Garden. It's going to be an open tender exercise, because all new hostels are contract hostels, and the operators do not have to be NGOs. We know that one of the operators at Deuce Corner Garden have successfully won contracts for 2 hostels. So you don't have to worry that existing operators will never be qualified to get new contracts. So we have applied new thinking, and we're taking into account the wishes of the elderly residents. In the future, we would maintain communication with the operators, the elderly, and their families. I'll invite Mr. Lam, Deputy Director of Social Welfare, to head an interdepartmental working group so as to provide communications platform with operators. And the SWD will also contact each and every resident and their family members as a matter of case management. Anything to supplement, Mr. Thomas Chan? As the Secretary has said, the NDAs in Kutong North and will be a major source for the provision of PRH and other housing units. There will be 16,000 residential units, 1,300 in the PRH, and 3,000 in private developments. So, provided that we do not affect the development of the Kutong North NDA, we will try to care for the elderly residents in those homes and hostels as far as possible. Because the location is just next to Kutong Station and is in the future town center, the land will be needed for PTA, for road, social welfare facilities, and other facilities, commercial facilities needed to tie in with the population intake of public and private housing estates. So we need to vacate the land to tie in with the future town center development. And thanks for members' views, and because of the views we have collected from the elderly residents and the operators, the Labour and Welfare Bureau and the SWD have conducted some studies, and as the Secretary has mentioned, so we'll resume the land at Deuce Corner Garden in phases. For the first phase, we only resume land that will be required for works in 2018, and then the remaining buildings at Deuce Corner Garden will be kept until 2023. And near Deuce Corner Garden, we would identify a site to build a new residential home block. And in 2023, the second phase of clearance will be carried out. As the Secretary has said, next to Deuce Corner Garden, it will be the land for the advanced works of Kutong North DNA. In the detailed design stage, which put in place stringent mitigation measures to minimize the impact on those remaining residents. We are going to keep noise and dust at an acceptable level, but we are unable to eliminate the problems completely. In the detailed design stage, we also look at the exact locations to build the new home building. It's in a GIC's land. We hope near the existing location, near Deuce Corner Garden, we can identify an GIC site so that the new homes can be commissioned in 2023. And in 2023, we also see the first batch of population moving into the new development in Kutong North NDA. The deputations may now need, each will be given 3 minutes I would like to remind you, you have been given a notice on those who are admitted to LegCo building. You are not supposed to be involved in rowdy behavior, and you must observe our rules. And also, your speeches will not be covered by LegCo Powers and Privileges Ordinance, Cap 382. In other words, you are responsible for your own words, although LegCo members are covered by the powers and privileges. We have some elderly residents sitting over at the back. I'll give each one of you 3 minutes. And if you want to speak after that, please raise your hands and I'll see what I can do. 3 minutes each. Miss Helen Chan Sok Hing from Comfort Elderly Home. Thank you, Madam Chair, Deputy Chairman, members, officials. I thank members for supporting the motion to retain the homes at Dew's Corner Garden, and that's why we have this meeting. My name is Helen Chan. I'm deputy chairperson from Comfort Elderly Home. We have Mr. Zhang Kin Bong, and then Mr. Lai Ming Fai is an experienced operator. We also got Mr. Lau Tak Kang, and then we have 2 elderly residents, Mr. Leung Pak Yao, Mr. Wan Hon Kang. After the resumption of the buildings at Dew's Corner Garden, we have been investing heavily in operating the homes. And we have a very special elderly village as the result of our labors. We have 1,100 or so places, 300 board places. We have nurses, social workers, physiotherapists. We provide quality elderly services in the context of a village. And then we solve the problem of caring for the elderly, for those living nearby. And we also provide care for elderly people who cannot go home and they are due for discharge from the hospital. When there's a flu outbreak, we also play our role. We would carry out segregation and quarantine measures so as to reduce the number of people who have to be admitted to hospitals. Well, for example, we have been dealing with the vancomycin-resistant virus cases very seriously. We are a partner of the SWD and the Hospital Authority. We provide service to the elderly so that they can live their twilight years in dignity. You can see us taking our elderly residents to Ocean Park or to have traditional village feasts in the NT on wheelchairs. We have been there for 17 years. How many periods of 17 years can one enjoy? I hope the administration would recognize our contribution and allow the elderly residents to be able to access quality residential care homes. The environment is very green, and they have built the social network for the past 17 years or so. Please don't break up their social fabric.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Li Ming Hui. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, government officials and members. Now, since the government did not have any long-term planning in taking care of the elderly, the LCG has DCG developed. Because of the huge demand, the government introduced the board play scheme, and it was quite a large scale cluster of LCGs at DCG accepting applicants under the BPS, and the site originally could be leased for private residential developments. In the end, the site was leased through short-term tenancy agreements to LCGs, and on the whole, over half of the places were in the private. The private sector provides half of the total number of places, so the private LCGs should not be regarded as commercial business. Having set up the so-called elderly village at DCG, actually it cannot be regarded as the best elderly village. It can at best be regarded as an elderly village that is quite good in Hong Kong comparing to other places. For other private LCGs, elderly residents are like living in regulated subdivided units. They may have fire escape corridors, etc. In those corner garden, for LCGs, they're more like HOS development comparing to private LCGs, which are like public rental housing. So shouldn't the elderly residents deserve home ownership scheme flats at DCG? We understood the Secretary's plan only last week, and the details were never discussed with us. We had no idea the implementation details. We hope that if this is proceeded with, the level of care for the elderly should not be decreased. The LCGs at the DCG should be kept. Originally, the government developed the place to resolve the problems. Now, the government is not keeping its premises. It's unethical for the government to just remove us. Next, Mr. Chung Kim Kong from the Faith Home for the Aged. Thank you, Madam Chair and members, for your concerns over the number of LCGs at DCG. You have come up with ways to help the elderly residents living there, and the government this time has made a proposal. Perhaps through the effort of members, resources could be identified to help us to have a future. We've just heard from the Secretary that 8 of the blocks would be demolished. We don't know what would be the criteria for demolishing the blocks. But on the whole, it seems they don't have anything to do with building houses. If the purpose of Kutong North NDA is for addressing housing problem, it seems the site is not used for this purpose at all. Some may be for government facilities, education facilities, or some of the area may be used to provide buffer for a railway station. So we really question whether this is for the purpose of addressing housing problems, because our elderly residents are facing a housing or accommodation issue, and some 300 residents will be affected by phase 1 of the project. And Secretary should know that for existing RCHGs operated at the DCG, not affected by phase 1 of the development, there aren't extra places to absorb those affected by the phase 1 development. They need to go somewhere else. And what we ask for is for the place to remain. It should not be cleared or removed, or it should not be decanted to another district. As said just now, we provide such good facilities to care for our elderly. At this stage, the government is beginning to drive the elderly residents out of the area so that they can no longer enjoy such good services. The government seems to be trying their best to help make arrangements for the elderly. For example, a private charter flight. It's just like sending a private charter flight to help our elderly people. And yet we see only the commercial class seats or business class seats in the private charter flights, and residents are not under the enhanced workplace scheme are not eligible to even board the flight. We don't know whether they have will be eligible to undergo the standard care needs test and be eligible for EBPS. It's just like the elderly residents not eligible for a private jet. So I hope, because they haven't saved up enough money. The other point is that the elderly residents are cannot find anyone they're familiar with. Now, it's just like having boarded the private jet. The interior might be very good, but the elderly residents found all the stewardess or air hostesses different from those they knew. Next, Mr. Lau. Mr. Lau Tek-kun. Thank you for members who have worked hard to fight for the RCGs at the DCG. I thank them. I am the family member of an elderly resident living at one of the RCGs there. I'm also the chef for the RCGs there. I am a cook or chef by occupation, and my elderly parent fell ill and has been living in an elderly home, and I have a religious faith. I would like to take care of my mother who lives in an elderly home there, and I would also like to take care of the elderly residents and provide them with meals suitable to their health. And having learned about the possible demolition of RCGs at the Dale's Corner Garden, my whole family, including my siblings, became very worried. What should we do? This may be about my own family problems, but there are over 1,000 elderly residents living there. That means close to tens of thousands or even 100,000 people related to the elderly residents there are aggrieved. This is the wish of the 100,000 family members of elderly residents there. Please keep the place. The government wants a harmonious society. Please keep the place so that elderly residents can continue to live there, and family members of these elderly residents can be free of worries for their elderly family members. One more point. I hope government officials and members here can understand we are all children of our parents. We want our parents to have a good life, and several hundred residents would be affected, even if only phase 1 development, and only if phase 1 will be demolished. Please minimize the impact. Next, Mr. Leung Pak Yao of the 2 elderly gentlemen sitting at the back. No demolition, no removal. I have no other homes. I hope Secretary can consider that I'm single. I have no children, no parents. So I hope that Secretary, I demand that Secretary help me live better.
I think whatever you propose should be lawful, and you should always make proposals that are welcome by the public. So I beg you, Secretary, I just need 3 meals a day. I thank you all. Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Wan Hon Kang. Take your time. My name is Wan Hon Kang. I lead a comfortable life at Dew's Corner Garden. It's a quiet garden. And now the government wants to demolish my home. I'm in pain. My children live far apart. I live alone in Hong Kong. I'm in my 80s. I asked the government why you want to break up. Sorry. Mr. Wan, please pause. Please don't kneel down, Mr. Leung. I'm afraid that you may have a problem getting up again. Please be seated. I have no one to rely on. I rely on the DCS for home. I'm in my 80s. How much time do I have got? And now the government wants to forcibly take down my home. It's going to be a miserable future for me. I hope members here will help us. Please ask for a favor from the government so I can spend the remaining time of mine in DCG. There are thousands of them there. They are my siblings. I have been living in Hong Kong alone for decades, and now I'm homeless. Where can I turn to for assistance? The government is just forcing me to die, and I don't even be allowed the remaining time of my life. I don't have no one to depend on. I'm satisfied if I am given sufficient food. Why should the government do this to me? Why do you want to demolish my home? Please preserve Dew's Corner Garden so that we can enjoy the remaining time of our lives. Now it's very worrying, and we cannot sleep at night. We are very happy to have a home, to have sufficient food. If you demolish our home, what will happen to our brothers and sisters? I hope the government would leave a way out for us. I thank the government for giving us a helping hand so that I can lead a decent life. I hope the government can deliver this for us. All right? Your views will be reflected. Now it's time for the government to respond. 3 minutes for the two officials, and then every member can ask questions. You are going to be given 3 minutes each. I'm going to extend the meeting by 15 minutes, so it will take us up to 1 p.m. Secretary, I thank the operators and the two elderly residents for their views. I have to stress again that we are very concerned about Dew's Corner Garden. Our colleagues in the Bureau and the departments have been trying very hard to respond to your aspirations and wishes. But we are in a dilemma. We need to have new developments. We need to learn. And as Mr. Thomas Chan has said, we in the Labour and Welfare Bureau are, of course, concerned about the well-being of the elderly residents. Ms. Chan, actually, we appreciate the contribution and achievement of the operators at the DCG. We are caught in the middle. Your interests come first in our consideration of the way forward. We have a partnership relationship. After the meeting, as I've said, Mr. Lam Kar Tai, Deputy Director of Social Welfare, will be leading an interdepartmental working group to talk to all the 11 operators, and will keep in touch with the elderly residents. We hope to work out something that is seamless. I'm also responsible for employment. Of course, I'm concerned about jobs of those who are working in DCG. We still have time. We'll try to minimize the implications. I said no more than 300 elderly residents will be affected. This is just the cap. We'll try to reduce the number as far as possible so that it's acceptable to all. This is just a starting point. And we hope in the process we'll render assistance in each and every case. Mr. Lai and Mr. Wan, Mr. Chung Kim Bon made the analogy that in the new homes we only have business class places, but that's not really the case. You don't need to pay a lot because it's not a bought place hostel. They are subvented places, only that the places are bought by the SWD. They are subvented places for residents, so they don't have to pay on top of what they are doing. As long as they are assessed to be eligible before 2023, if they need care and attention, they will be admitted to the new homes. There's no need for them to pay anything additional. But if they are not assessed to be eligible for subvented places, then we'll have to see what we can do. We may have to make some arrangements with private homes, but we still have time. So Mr. Leung and Mr. Wan, don't worry. Rest assured that we would give every assistance we can. We will maintain communication with your family members. We hope the whole exercise will be conducted with our heart, and we would do whatever we can for the well-being of the elderly residents there. Mr. Chan, let me supplement a couple of points. For this exercise involving DCG and the Kutong North NDA, as the Secretary said, we have the well-being of the elderly residents in mind. We are going to have a new home with 1,100 places near the existing DCG homes. We would do whatever it takes to have the new home ready by 2023, and also we would carry out the clearance in 2 phases. The second phase will be conducted in 2023, which will tie in with the commissioning date of the new home. As regards the first phase, we'll try to minimize the number of blocks to be affected, or the number of residents to be affected. Initially, we estimate that for the first phase, not more than 8 blocks which are being used for residential homes will be affected by the clearance. We'll see if we can keep more blocks to tie in with the construction work. That would depend on the detailed design. We are now trying to secure funding approval so that we can have the consultants taking a look on possible adjustments to the detailed design to enable us to maintain or to keep more blocks at DCG, and that would enable us to reduce the number of affected residents. For the second phase, the blocks that will be kept up to 2023. One of them is not for residential homes for the elderly, it's a government quarters. We'll try to see if we can vacate that so that it can be used for a home to accommodate those who are affected by the first phase of clearance. So the principle we have is to minimize the number of affected residents and to make suitable arrangements for them, including the relocation in situ, if possible, at DCG. A number of members have indicated their wish to speak. So, 3 minutes, Mr. Albert Ho. Okay. We're still jotting down the names. Let's have all the names jotted down first. Albert Ho, Helena Wong, KK Fong, Fernando Cheung, Kwok Ka Kay, Leung Yu Chung, Chen Hangbin, Gary Fan, Tan Ka Piu, Poon Siu Ping, and myself. So first thing, I'm going to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Second, I'm going to strictly enforce the 3-minute rule. Mr. Albert Ho, we all know that the Northeast NT development is a matter of controversy, a matter of discussion in this council. Many colleagues object to this new Northeast NT development approach as a matter of principle, and that is they are not in favor of massive demolition and relocation, and they would like to have an approach adopted so that the new developments can be accommodated in suitable sites without killing the existing buildings. We don't want to see something like Zhongguanou, whereby you tear down everything and have new developments there. Some people are saying that the government is jumping the gun, is presented as a fait accompli, saying that it's a fact that there will be massive clearance. We don't want to give people this impression. At this stage, of course, we can opt not to talk to you because many people are not in favor of land resumption in Northeast NT. And even if we leave aside the question of Northeast NT new development, if we say we do not want to see DCG cleared, we don't want to see residents relocated. Some colleagues adopt this approach. They have this stance, and of course there's no need to talk to you about it. What I'm going to say will not affect the stance of our objection to clearance. So whatever I'm going to say is at no prejudice to my stance as pronounced.
A second point, Secretary. You also expressed your acknowledgement of the RCHG operators building the place there as pioneers for a community to be built. It is important for them, for the elderly residents to look after each other and be friends with each other in the community there. And not only elderly residents are included in that community, their carers, their professionals attending their cases are also part of the community. So we have to consider if they're relocated in the future. This is important, and there may be works going on. Well, your time is up. Please wait for your second round. The administration can also wait for the second round. Dr. Helen Wong, please. Thank you, Madam Chair. As said by Mr. Albert Ho, now LegCo hasn't endorsed the Kutong North NDA. The PWSC hasn't endorsed the project. It has yet to be submitted to FC yet. So on the NENT NDA development project, what should be the way forward? What should be the mode of development? We have yet to decide all these issues. And now it seems you have jumped the gun. Before we have a clear decision on NENT NDA development, I think this paper should be set aside first. I think it's a matter of judgment. Now, for the Development Bureau's large-scale development of NENT, what you see is business opportunities and development opportunities and land. In Annex 2, the map, I can see that on the east side there will be a business and technology park, and on the other side there would be a commercial and residential development with public transport interchange. So we see developments here and there. Should this be the only mode of development? We see elderly residents here today, RCHG operators, their family members. They have another set of values. You look at the place from the perspective of business and business opportunities. They, however, talked about their sentiment and their family values. Are these priceless? What is your view, Secretary? The values. Dr. Wong. We want to try our best to handle this issue this time. That is why we have had ample discussions with various political parties. Over 1,000 elderly residents, RCHG operators will be affected. We have not treated the issues carefully. We're talking about 2023, and we're trying to minimize the impact in the first phase project. As for the number of blocks which will be demolished in the first phase, that doesn't mean ultimately these blocks will be demolished in the first phase. We're trying still to reduce the number of blocks to be reduced, and we try to keep the blocks as many as possible till 2023 so that there'll be a seamless transition. This is how I view this matter. We respect the elderly's wishes. This is a unique example. We do not have any precedents of such an elderly village in Hong Kong. It has been a success for over a decade. However, as I said, we need to strike a balance. We're caught between the rock and a hard place. We need to balance it with development as well. Now the elderly residents are begging you to leave them alone. Dr. Wong, your time is up. Please observe the time limit. Next, Mr. Frederick Fong. Secretary, you're doing one thing good on the one hand and one thing bad at the same time. You tell them that they have done a good job, and then they will be removed. If they really were doing a good job, they should be kept. And these should be kept. First of all, the per capita space. It should be comparable to HOS. Also, apart from the blocks, you also need to consider the surrounding natural environment. And I visit him many times. I can see that their services are very good. Their staff are like the elderly residents' family members. So how to keep their per capita living space, their natural living environment, and what about the operator? You just praise the operator for having done a good job, but you're not preserving these advantages. And after demolition, where will they go? They will be on exile. Don't tell them they should go to the urban district. These elderly residents do not prefer the urban districts. Now, in situ relocation. Is there any in situ relocation of the whole village? Do you have these promises? Can you make these promises? I'm sorry to say, but development is not everything. If you praise them for their work, don't be hypocritical and then remove them. I want to clarify that for this demolition proposal, I'm caught between the rock and a hard place. I just want to rationalize things. We need to strike a balance. As for the places the elderly residents will be relocated, I have started discussing with their family members, but may I emphasize that the several blocks will be demolished in the first phase, but this is not the final decision. We have been checking the maps, and maybe we can reduce the number of blocks to be reduced, and then, although we said 300 elderly residents would be affected, maybe not as many as 300, maybe ultimately just 200 would be affected. And Mr. Chan made a very good point. Well, Secretary, please wait for a moment later. I want to emphasize that I support Dr. Fernando Cheung's motion. Madam Chair, may I be excused? I have another meeting to attend to. But Dr. Fernando Cheung, the Dill's Corner Garden is, in fact, a historical mistake. After 1997, after the British garrison left Hong Kong, the barracks were left, the camp was left, and the government at that time thought that it was necessary to develop the RCHGs. Naturally, throughout the decade, the camp was developed into a cluster of RCHGs, and they could be regarded as the Rolls Royce of RCHGs. But now the government is suggesting that the whole place be demolished. Just now, the Secretary said that the interests of elderly residents would be put first, but I find him very hypocritical. Deputy Chairman, last month, the administration submitted some papers, and I believe you have read them as well. The administration hasn't considered facing the demolition or considering the number of blocks to reduce, etc. Only when Madam Chair insisted, and only when you needed to canvass votes for the NTNDA project, and you wanted the several votes from FTU members, did you back down. And we feel very sorry that Mr. Leung, the elderly gentleman, has to kneel and beg government officials, because they make all the decisions whether you can stay or not. I really can't accept what you said when you say that you put elderly's interests first. You never considered their interests. And about this feasible proposal of phasing the development into two phases, elderly residents still have to ask, how will I be affected? When will my place be demolished? What if I haven't gone through the care needs test? What about the social work, the staff working there? The social workers have stopped referring cases to the RCHEs at DCG, and you are letting them, so you're drying them up eventually by not accepting new cases. Chairman, I have a motion. Let's deal with them a moment later. Dr. Kokaki. Thank you, deputation, for attending. Secretary, I don't know how you feel, but I feel very sad. We see the elderly gentleman kneeling here, giving up his dignity to beg you. And Secretary, you didn't respond. And the detailed study of NENT NDA project hasn't even started yet. And now the administration will demolish the RCGs at DCG first. This is outrageous. We take tens of millions of dollars to conduct a study. In the end, what's the purpose? It's a waste of money. The government has all the plans in mind. The Development Bureau is such a mess. Secondly, on the map, there are various proposed uses, but they haven't been subject to consultation. I correct, Chairman, $340 million for the study. And about the uses like mixed use, etc., what are they? I think the government has done a sloppy job. Secondly, Secretary, now, between Phase 1 and Phase 2, you have 5 years' time between 2018 and 2023, and there is much room for you to keep this place, and this can serve as an example to show people that the government considers people, and that is how developments in the new territories should be taken ahead. They need an undertaking. Between 2023, no elderly residents there should be required to move. And secondly, what is the amount of money involved? How much taxpayers' money would be wasted? Can you promise the elderly residents not to touch that the DCG RCGs before 2023? Secretary, please be brief. 2 points. Now, it's not a demolition and redevelopment. By the time it's demolished in 2023, they will be relocated to somewhere else, 200 meters away from the original location. This will be a block of 8, a multi-user block of 8 stories. It's of quality, Mr. Leung Yiu-chung. Just now, one elderly gentleman knelt down. The other gentleman cried as they delivered the speech. They asked you not to take down the place. Secretary, you continue to talk in a bureaucratic tone. You talk about development, but as said by another member, the FC hasn't approved funding for the study. And even after the study, or even after funding is approved, we need time for the study to be conducted, and it is still unknown whether it's really necessary to demolish the place. Maybe other forms of development can take place there.
Unless the Secretary said it's not possible, everything has been said. And if everything is said, why do you need money to be approved by this council to carry out a study? So is it finalized, or do you really need to carry out a study? If it's not finalized and you need to conduct a study, then the second question is, why are you telling us that you are going to take down 8 blocks? On what basis would you be doing that? And saying that it's okay in 2023, 2024. Are you not trying to pull wool over our eye? Is it finalized? If it's finalized, if the plan has been finalized, why do you need to carry out a study? I will defer to the Deputy Secretary. We are talking about DCG. The elderly residents would like to remain there. So I think the question should be answered by the Secretary for Labour and Welfare. Well, it doesn't matter. If you are going to carry out a study, can it be premised on preserving all the DCG elderly homes? Then I think that would be a study worth carrying out. But if you are saying that you are going to demolish their homes, then I don't think there's the need to conduct a study. Deputy Secretary, we are here because we want to focus on the elderly homes at DCG and also the arrangements we are proposing. As for the Kutong North NDA, is part of a greater study. There was a first phase of public participation in 2008, and there's another stage in 2013. So we have had quite an extensive public participation exercise before we have reached this stage. Although the town planning process is still ongoing, and we are also applying for funds from the council under the PWSC to conduct a study on ground investigation and also detailed design. We've explained that in this design on ground investigation and detailed design, we would provide for flexibility that should, in the town planning process, some land uses, some zoning has been changed, we would be able to cater for them. For this Kutong North, Fanning North NDA is going to provide a lot of public housing units. If we are to overturn this, we're going to affect the provision of 30,000 PLH units and 50 housing units. And we would carry out the processes in parallel. So whether it's about DCG or other places and facilities that are going to be affected, for example, some of the aspirations of the commercial operators and other businesses that will be taken into consideration. Mr. Chen Hangpan, from the time we started to contact those living in DCG up to this time, we have noticed that the government has been acting in sincerity, and a proposal has been made. Why do we know that they are sincere? Well, at first we were concerned that that the different government bureaus and departments will be passing its buck around, and now we have people from both bureaus here to discuss the arrangement for DCG. I think that's an improvement. I hope the two bureaus should work with the operators at DCG to come up with feasible measures. This panel previously passed a motion which in my view is very reasonable, and that is we need to reposition or preserve DCG. We do not mention in situ preservation, but I think you should find some suitable sites near Kutong as far as possible for repositioning. We understand there's a need for new developments, but there are also other needs of the elderly residents of these homes. I hope the two bureaus will try to resolve all the problems in the development process. I have a question. In 2018, you are going to carry out a partial clearance, and then in 2023, you may be able to provide a new residential home. Can you advance the completion date of the new residential home? For example, you can do the planning right away, and construction can start earlier. and also to defer the 2018 clearance date a little bit, so that the two can meet halfway. We can have the partial clearance later, and the new home will be available earlier. This will spare the pain of on the part of elderly residents. Secretary, well, we work hard. We look at each and every case. Will not leave any elderly residents alone. The question is, are we going to strive for earlier completion? The answer is definitely yes. We are going to have new developments. There are residents to be affected. We will try to make the arrangements as appropriate as possible. Then we want to have a seamless transition when the new home comes on stream. And we are going to have an interdepartmental, inter-bureau task force to provide a platform to work with the operators. We'll try to make things as smooth as possible. Members, if you want to get answers for your questions, make sure that you ask short questions. Mr. Gary Fang, I've never been in favor of any form of a Northeast NT development program. This has been my stance since I became a LegCo member. This plan is controversial. It carries far-reaching implications. We have a precedent case of Choi Yun Chun. Because of the new development, many elder people could not cope, and they passed away. And now, a new tragedy will come to pass under the Development Bureau, under our watch, under our current term. You have spoken nice words. You would make available smooth arrangements. You would reduce the impact as far as possible. But the elderly residents don't want to have any impact imposed on them. You want to provide more land for housing units. You are going to forcibly evict 1,000 elderly residents who are living in homes or who are aging in place. Why do you want to do this? I move a motion, and Mr. Gary Chan of the DAB also move another motion. I want to preserve DCG, and DAB wants to have reprovisioning of the DCG. It's not in line with due process. The planning matters for Kutong North and Fanning North are with the Town Planning Board, and discussion in this council is not yet complete, and there are 50,000 submissions received by the government. Most of them are not in favor of the NDA, and the Northeast NT is 7,000 to 1. Only 7 submissions are supportive. I have said this again and again. The government should retract this. The community has spoken. We have asked the government to consider developing the Fanning Golf Course. We have been presenting alternative development plans from the community. Why is the administration not willing to consider all of these plans? Do you need an answer? Well, you have a few seconds. I think these are development matters. I'll ask the Deputy Secretary for Development to say something. Maybe I can arrange for that later. Mr. Tenkapiu? Since we don't have sufficient time, I think we can consider Mr. Fung, our colleague's proposal, and that is we should do it just like the redevelopment of public rental housing, so that the space they enjoy would broadly be maintained. If you cannot do it in situ, can you provide something for 900 residents nearby? So in this exercise, you are not going to be able to comply with PRH redevelopment standards. In the first phase, 200, 300, or 20 or so elderly residents will be evicted. So where would they go? Tell us where they would go. And 551 who have not passed the assessment test of medium level of impairment, where would they go ultimately? I'll say a few things, and the Deputy Director of Social Welfare will say something. For those who are covered by the bought place scheme, as you can see, it's in point 1 of the letter you have received. It's Block 3. We hope Block 3 can be converted into a home. At present, this is a government building. It's not used for a home. It's the quarters of Correctional Services Department. Our plan is to convert it into a home so that we can use it to accommodate those who are affected, and of course we'll make use of vacant places in other homes. In the North District, we have 1,700 vacant places. If the elderly residents have not passed the assessment test and they want to go to a private home, they can do so in the North District because of the availability of vacant places. And we have also ask the existing operators to take on the affected residents if they have vacant places. If we want to use Block 3 as a temporary home, can you, how many residents can you accommodate if you give them a reasonable provision of accommodation? In the North District, there's a shortage of places to start with. I think we cannot do this in the first round. You can reserve it for the second round.
Mr. Poon Silping. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to follow up on this point as well, because according to the letter, Block number 3 will be used as a temporary home, and secondly, as mentioned in the paper and mentioned by the Secretary, for Phase 2, relocation will not be later than 2023. Of course, for the new complex, it's expected to be commissioned in 2023. Of course, we want the progress to be expedited. What if it's delayed? Can you guarantee? I mean, if the complex is not completed before 2023, will you still force them to move? Because the project is undertaken by the Development Bureau, but the RCG is under Labour and Welfare Bureau. So in the event of the development being delayed, what will happen? We would like to see seamless transition. The 2023 will be very important. We will definitely see the completion of the complex of quality with facilities and equipment for before we would start the intake of elderly residents, and we require the existing demolition of the existing premises. Next, Deputy Chairman. Thank you. Chair. Just now, Mr. Tan Ka-Piu asked a question, and then Secretary said Block 3 could be used as a temporary home. It's just like answering in drips and drabs. But I want to emphasize that according to the Federation, you need to provide extra provisional homes. So according to that suggestion, you need to build more temporary homes in phase 2, so that 5 years later, these 1,000 residents, or less than 1,000 residents, can be relocated in the new homes. This may be a better approach. The first question, therefore, is whether you will provide more temporary places, and secondly, can existing operators continue to provide services in the complex? I believe if it's tendered out, over 90% of the operators will not win the contract. Can you take an ex gratia approach for them to be transitioned to the new complex, so that our CHE staff can be relocated in situ, so to speak, for them to be relocated in situ along with the elderly residents? Secretary, from now to 2018 and from 2018 to 2023, there will be a lot of variables. For example, some residents are already, over 100 residents have passed the care needs test, and they are on the central waiting list for subsidized places. Well, my point is, Secretary, if Block 3 can accommodate all the residents, then that is the best. If not, then will you provide, when you build more temporary places? Now we have a task force concerning RCHE operators. We put our heads together to discuss the issues. We have private homes, only 500 places are occupied at the moment. We have over 100 vacant places, which can provide a buffer. Secondly, 110 residents are on the central waiting list, and their places will be vacated by then. These are not what we can say for certain at this stage, but these are what will happen then. Mr. Tam-Yu-Chung. Well, in the past, I already asked questions on the relocation arrangement for the elderly residents living in RCHEs at the DCG. I don't think this is jumping the gun. What we want is, before the project is kick-started, you can tell us what arrangements you have for relocating elderly residents there. And it's not the case that the only priority is given to development. The project is about building more public housing units, so we consider holistically for grassroots, for elderly citizens and everyone. We want to find out how we can cater for the needs of various sectors of the community. I visited the RCHEs at DCG. I talked to some of the elderly residents. Of course, they wanted no demolition and no relocation. I understand their position. They have been living there for over a decade, and elderly residents would not like to move. They once are used to a community. And I visited some elderly people before. They used to live in the old buildings in Wan Chai, and they felt upset after being relocated to Shao Kei Wan public housing. Is it because the quality of the living environment is worse? No, but they just need the time to get used to it. For the RCGs at the DCG, they have independent houses, they have streets, etc. But this is not the best design for RCGs. In the long term, changes will have to be made. The new design will definitely better cater for the needs of elderly residents. And perhaps over the decade, the RCG operators have built a strong relationship with the elderly residents through their committed work. I think after the new complex is built, you may consider retaining them because of their commitment and because of their experience. Of course, according to the policy, fresh tendering exercises should be done, but you should also give weight to their experience and the commitment of these RTHG operators. All right, next, Mr. Frankie Yik. Thank you, deputations and the two elderly gentlemen, for coming here and expressing your views. Your requests are reflected in the letter, and I believe the administration has done something to improve their proposal. I believe we still have some time. We don't need to rush into any decision today. The proposal at PWSC still hasn't been passed. Now, since this is a new project, is it possible to have a new building? Of course, the hardware cannot be changed. We want to retain the established community. For the 1,100 places in the complex, it should, relocation of the 900 existing residents should be done in one go into the complex, offering 1,100 places. I think this will be the best arrangement. Thank you for your comments. We will spare no effort in working with the Development Bureau to strive for the expedient commissioning of the new complex so that we really have a seamless transition. All right, so much for first round. My turn. I spent some time on this issue. I sought views from RCG operators, elderly residents. I also talked to the government departments together with the assistant director. I visited the place. I want to say that I acknowledge the administration's effort in heeding some of the views. I recalled I was upset then, last week, not long ago. According to the administration's reply, they made no progress at all. And now, with this proposal, I think we need to acknowledge the fact that they have heeded some views and taken on board some views. I think we're all concerned about one issue, in situ relocation. I was involved in the Sao Mau clearance action. All the residents were able to be relocated in situ. Why was that? Now the idea is okay. It will be divided into two phases. From here to 2018 and then from 2018 to 2023. I don't agree with the former. For the latter, my view, last week I told Secretary that I do not accept the fact that 300 could take place out there. It should be in there. I told the Permanent Secretary, I don't care, just let them stay on till 2023, and the whole batch will be relocated to the original place, and they can decide whether to go to the subsidized RCHEs or to go back and to their own families, etc. The major principle is that there should be in situ relocation. In today's letter, if Secretary has received their letter, I believe they have set out very clearly these points and they are being fair. Secretary, please don't just please tell us clearly. By 2018, will all elderly residents be kept at DCG first, as for the redevelopment of Block 3, etc.? You think about it yourself. As for 2023, by 2023, there should be 1,100 places to accommodate these residents, and this is all right. I think they have taken on board our suggestion. There should be a garden that should not be far away from the original location, and these points should also be accepted. Finally, 1 minute. Dr. Fernando Zhang, Mr. Tan Ka Pil, Ms. Chen Yun Han, and Mr. Albert Ho. I'll draw a line here. Fernando Zhang, Tan Ka Pil, Albert Ho, Tamil Zhong, Chen Yun Han. All right, I'll draw a line here. 1 minute per member. I've extended the meeting for 15 minutes, but since I have to deal with Dr. Fernando Zhang's motion, I'll see if members agree whether we extend the meeting further by 15 minutes. Any objections, Ms. Tamil Zhong, and some other members as well? All right, let's just make good use of the time now then. 1 minute, Dr. Fernando Zhang. My question is, the administration's proposal is to start demolishing in 2018, and 300 residents or so will be affected. Now, a question for the RCGs. Are there any operational difficulties? Any difficulties with arrangements? Will you be able to arrange for these 300 residents? Who would take the question? I think it is impossible for us to absorb the 300 affected elderly residents. We have 900 residents with a capacity of 1,100. We still have some. We only have some 100 places available, and we put elderly residents first. They used to live in Home A, and you force them to Home C. Is it? In effect, depriving them of their dignity.
Mr. Albert Ho, well, I told the Secretary the other day when I saw him that if you start making referrals, no new residents will be referred to these homes at DCG, and then you will see the resident population will be dropping, and then the operators will face difficulties. So you are gradually phasing them out. Can the operators continue without the need to leave earlier? I think it's only reasonable that you allow them to move at the same time, and the operators should be allowed to operate in the new homes. Mr. Tan Ka Pil, I think we still have time to do a better job. We don't need to make any so-called critical judgment. And I don't think this is the last briefing we are going to get from the administration. They should continue to come back. I have two requests, special requests. For the 500 or so residents who have not been assessed or who have not passed the assessment, you have to tell us what they are going to face. And you are going to have new operators. Are you going to provide the new homes to existing operators? If you want to get partners, don't always talk about open and fair procedures. If you want to build a partnership, well, you must come up with special arrangements to accommodate your partners. If you get the agreement of this council, you will not be criticized by the Audit Commission. Mr. Leung Kok Hong, I just told Mr. Frankie Yik that Messi should not be asked to join the youth squad. You are talking about experienced operators who have proved to be effective. If they are doing well, if the users are saying that they are doing well, why do you want to do away with them? You are not giving back what you take away. There's no excuse that you can avail yourself to. They are operating there. They have been effective. It's your catchphrase. It's proven to be effective. If you say we have to do it in open, transparent, and just manner, you just look at what is effective. If Chinese herbal medicine can deal with your problems with bladder stone or gallstone, you should continue with the same treatment. And now the operators have been contributing for so many years, and the users are happy. Then you should not try to get rid of them in the name of an open and fair and transparent process. Don't talk about the market. Many evils have been carried out in the name of the market. What do you mean by the proven effective, Secretary? I don't need an answer. Mr. Tam Yu Chung, I want to say a few things about Dr. Fernando Zhang's motion, and that is he wants to preserve the homes, and there's no demolition or relocation will be carried out. Well, we cannot make a decision now, so I'm not going to support this. We want the government to work out something reasonable so that services can be enhanced, so that there will be a seamless transition. I don't think we should just be talking about emotional feelings. We must work out something feasible so as to benefit the elderly residents. That's what we want. All right? I don't suppose you need an answer for that. Okay, I have a minute. Let me say this to the administration again. We have received a letter from DCG. You have two phases. You should be able to do a seamless transition. But what will happen between 2018 and 2023? I've contacted the residents. The residents are happy with the service rendered by the service providers. So they are concerned that you are going to dry up their resources. You have to consider the worries of these operators. They are doing a good job. Why can't you take them up as partners? We'll maintain close liaison with the operators, the elderly residents, and their families. Mr. Fong will be leading an interdepartmental working group. There are many things we need to discuss. For example, how can we make the best use of the space, and how can we reduce the number in the first phase so that it will be manageable. And then there will be more places available in the future. A member asked what would happen to those who have not been assessed. We'll help them to get the assessment. Some of them are not aware of what is involved. And if they are assessed to be eligible, they will be eligible to move to the new homes. and we would talk to the operators on cooperation. I allow more time to the Secretary because I want him to answer all the outstanding questions raised by members. I will give you 2 more minutes. Would that be agreeable? Mr. Tankabil asked a question. I've answered that, and that is the partnership during the transitional period. That's certainly going to be implemented. There are still 9 years. We would certainly do a good job. We will not give up on any single elderly residents. The operators have been working effectively, and we are also going to talk to you about the tendering process. We also want to see quality enhancement in the private sector. We have been given a bigger budget to buy places. We hope everyone will move towards better quality. You may say that at this stage many things are not possible, but if we work with our heart, we can make things possible in the coming years. All right, Dr. Fernando Zhang, please move your motion. It's a very simple motion. After 17 years of operation, DCS has become an elderly village for more than 1,000 residents. It has a good environment and suitable for elderly residents. This panel thinks that the DCG should be maintained in the NENT program. There should be no demolition and no relocation of DCG, so that the elderly residents can live out their twilight years with ease of mind. All right. If you are in support of the motion, you don't need to speak. Any opposition, any dissenting views? If not, then for those who objects to Dr. Fernando Zhang's motion, hands up. 2. Those in favor of the motion. Let me remind members again, this motion calls for no demolition and no reprovisioning, no relocation of DCG. But this is under the purview of the Development Bureau. So I can say that we support the motion. Can we have a division? Once again, those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Do you need to take a shot? All right. Dr. Fernando Zhang, Albert Ho, Helena Wong, Ronnie Tong, Leung Yu Chung, Gary Fan, and Leung Kok Hong. They are in favor of the motion. All right. Deputy Chairman Peter Zhang, I will use a minute. I do not support and I do not object to the motion. I've been involved in many negotiations. I think the government is sincere about this. They have the crux of the matter is to make some promises with regard to 2018 to 2023. So I abstain. Mr. Tenkapil, same as me. Okay. I'll ask the clerk to record this. First of all, I would like to thank the elderly residents for their attendance. Well, we are going to have a discussion on other occasions. The government should liaise closely with you and also with members.